The Ambitious Radio Network. Conversations with ambitious entrepreneurs and thought leaders. Are you an entrepreneur, startup junkie, or just someone interested in improving their leadership skills? If you're looking to be motivated, inspired, and uncover what it takes to get to the next level, listening to Ambitious Radio will be well worth the investment of your time. We have weekly engaging conversations with today's most influential thought leaders and entrepreneurs as they discuss their successes, failures, tipping points, and other priceless information that you can apply immediately after listening. And welcome to the show. Good to have you right here. It is Ambitious Radio, hosted by our friend Doug Parker, talking about entrepreneurship and leadership while interviewing interesting people and what makes them ambitious. Now, you know the show wouldn't be possible without our sponsors, Grasshopper.com, the entrepreneur's phone system. You know, most of the time, small business owners need to personally guarantee any loans that their companies take out. That can be kind of tough to do if you have credit issues. So if you have less than perfect credit, go to RepairMyCreditNow.com for a free credit report evaluation. RepairMyCreditNow.com. Doug, what do we have going on today?
All right. Today we're going to be visiting with Gino Wickman. He's a founder of EOS Worldwide, a leadership team development company based in Michigan aimed at small businesses and the entrepreneurial community. He's authored multiple books, including Traction, Get a Grip on Your Business. Gino started his entrepreneurial journey at 21 years old when he took over the family business, turned it around in 3 years, and continued to run it for the next 7 years. So welcome to the show, Gino. Tell us a little about yourself. What did I miss in the intro?
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. Where would you like me to start when you say, tell you about myself?
Well, just a little bit about yourself. We talked a little bit about you professionally, but you said you took over a family business, and that's always an interesting dynamic. I know I work with my family, and that always can be interesting. What was that like, and were you involved in the business kind of before you took it over, or was it just kind of at 21? Sounds like you were really kind of just dropped off in your lap a little bit there.
Yeah, that's great. I never know how far back you want me to go. So I've been an entrepreneur my whole life, and that led me up to taking over the family business at 25, an incredibly successful business. Just unfortunately, it was not being run well. So great product, great service. And I was able to get my arms around it. It unfortunately was in some deep, ugly debt. So financial disciplines were not in place either. And with a couple great mentors and just a fanatic about learning, got my arms around it and was able to turn it around as I shared. So I'm just a fanatic about learning. I'm a very passionate guy when it comes to business ownership, and entrepreneurs, and just applied all of that to turning it around and running it. And then we successfully sold it after about 8 years.
Okay. All right. Now, you say you're a fanatic about learning. So I always like to hear, kind of what folks are world class at. And it sounds like that you just really dive deep. So when you say that, what do you mean by a fanatic of learning? What makes you tick there? And then how do you actually continue to learn? Is it reading? Is it, there's so many different ways to get stuff in your brain nowadays. What are you doing there?
It's all of the above. So, when I talk about that, it starts with a passion, and that passion, as I said, is in the area of entrepreneurship and business owners and basically achievement and succeeding. And so I am basically attracted to anything in print, anything in audio, any people. And so it's a lot of reading, it's a lot of listening, and it's a lot of conversations. And so I love to find people that are where I'd like to be and spend time with them and learn from them. And so I've just had some amazing mentors in my life. And so I just love, in addition to all that, listening to people. And so I guess I'm also a great listener, but just a sponge of knowledge and information and what's going on out there in the realm of that passion. So I don't know how to build a bridge, but I certainly know how to help an entrepreneur.
Sure. Well, and I see, speaking of entrepreneurs, I see that you were one of the founding members of the Detroit chapter of Entrepreneurs Organization. And interestingly enough, back on episode 24, we interviewed Vern Harnish. And what a great organization that is. But how did you initially become involved with that and decided to help found the chapter there in Detroit?
Well, there were two founding members, John Anderson and Marty Petz. And what they did is they rounded up 8 other gentlemen, one of which was me, and they pulled us together, and that's what kicked off the chapter.
Gotcha. And then are you still involved in that, or have you kind of transitioned onto other things at this point?
Yeah, no longer involved. I was involved in that for about 8 years. I'm certainly still kind of an honorary member, and many of
Mhm.
my clients are EO members. So I have a deep connection to EO. I'll go back and speak to the chapter from time to time in other chapters. So still very connected to it, but no longer a member.
Okay, very good. And when it comes to your success, a very successful individual, but what would you say is one of the personal habits that's really most contributed to that success?
This one seems so simple, and there isn't any one thing, certainly, as you know. And aside from what drives me, one very simple discipline I teach to as many people that will listen is, in addition to having very clear goals, uh, every night before I go to bed, I plan the next day. So I literally lay out my entire next day and everything I need to get done so that when I go to bed, I sleep soundly. My subconscious is already working on the next day. And I wake up ready to hit the ground running, as opposed to what a lot of people do. They just get out of bed, get up, and go where the day takes them. That has served me well for the last 25 years.
And when you lay that out, are you like a calendar guy? Do you have it in a phone, or is it just mentally laying it out, before you go to bed?
So it's always in a calendar from a standpoint of, uh, my calendar is full and well planned out into the future. Frankly, it is on a legal pad. And so I sit there at night with legal pad in hand, transfer everything from the next day's calendar in kind of chronological order on a legal pad. And I'll be doing
Interesting.
the next 25 years. So technology is great, but there's also some things that stand the test of time. There's something about writing that is on a primal level very powerful, and countless studies have proven that when we write, we retain better. I could go on, but I use a legal pad.
For years I did that as well. I like the Franklin Covey planners, and I used to like that. I could go back through and look at the days past or years past, and for whatever reason, at some point in the last 10 years, I switched over to the digital side of things, and there's some things about the digital that I love because it'll alert you or remind you of something, where the calendar, the legal pad is like you just got to look at it to make sure what time it is. Um, but I agree with you. There's something about writing it down for me that helps when I take written notes, handwritten notes, and I go back and read them. It makes a huge impact on me as well. So over the years, you mentioned you had taken over the business, and it was not in good financial shape. And so at 25 years old, you kind of had the wherewithal to go through that. But were there any kind of landmines that just kind of hit you out of the blue when you took it over, other than the finances, or was that really the biggest thing that you had to deal with?
Well, I would say there were many landmines. As I mentioned, it was a very successful company. So my father had created a training program in the real estate industry that absolutely revolutionized how residential real estate agents are trained. And so the program stood the test of time. So the beauty was I had a great product and service. Again, the company was just poorly managed. And what happened is they had found themselves getting distracted by a lot of shiny stuff. And, all total, they were in about 6 different businesses. And so when I got involved, certainly there was the debt landmines, as you mentioned, but also all of the tentacles and the kind of incestuous nature of those 6 different entities and having to spin most of them off. And and some bad people that needed to go, and plenty of landmines. If I pondered for 5 minutes, I could probably list about 5 or 10 for you, but those are some examples.
Sure. Well, and I like the part you mentioned about the shiny objects, and maybe you could elaborate a little bit on that. You hear that term serial entrepreneur, and I claim to be one. I've got, it's funny, I've got 6 businesses right now that at some level they are all operating, but it is extraordinarily difficult to focus on the different things at different times. I've got to schedule like a maniac, and I'm working about 80, 90 hours a week right now to juggle it all. But can you elaborate on that a little bit, and then how you kind of just kind of broke it down and got the tentacles uninvolved, and how you felt like just running. Did you ultimately get it down just to the one business, or were there still a couple of them?
Yeah, there were still at the conclusion, there were really two, I would say. Could argue there were three, but two or three from six.
Gotcha. Okay.
Well, so to answer
Well,
your question, I am in the business of preventing entrepreneurs from getting distracted by shiny stuff. And history has shown the companies that focus outproduce the ones that are distracted. And so, you could give me 10 examples of how distracted companies were successful, but the rule is a typical entrepreneur goes along, is extremely successful in a business that they're in, and they gain a level of confidence that they think if they can succeed here, they can succeed anywhere. And there's lots of shiny stuff, and the more successful you are, the more stuff that shines. And when you're feeling that confident, you find yourself in another business, and then another business, and another business. So that's basically what happened to the family business. And that's what I see happening often. And so sometimes I'll engage a client that, we need to spin some things off because they're just far too distracted. And there's, 10 times growth opportunities just in their core. And it's all about getting them back to their core, getting them focused. And that's just kind of one of my genetic encodings, is helping them focus. And that's what I did for my dad and the family business.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, that makes perfect sense. Well, what we'll get into in the next segment is a little bit more on your book Traction and how that you've implemented EOS, and we'll determine what exactly that means right here on the Ambitious Radio Network, right after a brief word from our sponsors.
Here's another RepairMyCreditNow.com story.
It's a day this family had dreamed of for quite some time. They were finally getting that brand new SUV. The salesperson at the auto dealership gave them the keys and told them to take it for the weekend. He'd prepared the documents and called them Monday morning. The kids had already installed the headrest DVD when the phone rang. Seems there was a problem with their credit they were unaware of. They'd have to return the SUV to the dealership immediately. Embarrassing, to say the least.
www.repairmycreditnow.com.
Hello, this is Doug Parker with RepairMyCreditNow.com. Do you have less than perfect credit, a repo, maybe some late payments, a collection account? Are they being reported accurately? Studies show that over 70% of Americans have inaccuracies on their credit reports. Where do you fit in? Go to RepairMyCreditNow.com for your free credit report evaluation. And remember, your credit is your future. If you want to get started now, log on now. RepairMyCreditNow.com.
RepairMyCreditNow.com. www.repairmycreditnow.com.
As we get back into the show, let's give a shout out to our great sponsors, all3reports.com. That's all, the number 3 reports with an S.com. Many people check their credit every 3 to 5 years when they're financing a home or maybe when they're purchasing a new vehicle. But if there is an issue, it could be too late to do anything about it. So go to all3reports.com to find out more. Speaking of a new vehicle, a wise person once said, lease what depreciates, buy what appreciates. So go to Autoflex Leasing. They offer a better way to lease your next car. America's largest independent leasing company is Autoflex Leasing. Doug?
All right, we're back on the Ambitious Radio Network, and we've got Gino Wickman, author of Traction, and it is a fantastic book. I have read through it, and as I mentioned a little bit earlier, I'm kind of a serial entrepreneur, so I need to go back in and get reinforced, or probably get one of the coaches that are the implementers, I believe it is, that they have to help keep me in line. But Gino, welcome back to the show. Love to hear a little bit more about Traction and EOS and what that means for our listeners, and how that they can stay focused by using your system.
You bet. Great. Well, as we go into the specifics, I just want to quickly touch on, how it all developed. And, as we talked about in the first segment, I have a deep passion for entrepreneurs and business owners. And so the overriding purpose for me is helping people get what they want from their businesses. And, not every entrepreneur wants growth. It's truly a fallacy. In other words, if you really go into their psyche, they certainly want success, but success doesn't always mean growth. But also growth isn't always top line growth. Sometimes they want bottom line growth. But nonetheless, every entrepreneur wants something. And my obsession is helping them get that. And the truth of the matter is most are frustrated. And my obsession is also helping to reduce that frustration and give them a better balance of life. And so they tend to be frustrated about feeling out of control of their business. They're frustrated about their people, frustrated about lack of profit, hitting the ceiling, nothing's working. And so when you see that pain in the world, and I saw it clearly when I became a member of EO, and I was sitting on my forum table with my fellow entrepreneurs and the other people in the organization, and excuse the double negative, but I can't not do something when I see that pain. And so, I've been on a 20-year plus mission to solve that pain. And so God gifted me with OCD and ADD, which are two great weapons when you want to create something for entrepreneurs. And so I obsessed and tested and honed and tried over about a 5-year period, and hundreds of sessions with leadership teams, an operating system that helps an entrepreneur run a better business and orchestrate all of the human energy in that business. And I jokingly like to describe it as entrepreneurial Prozac, because it takes that wild and crazy entrepreneurial visionary and really helps them kind of rein everything in and run a better business.
One thing that I always, I find so interesting, and I think this is great because you've brought up a few things that you're actually doing. So, we've had, many authors on the program, and I've read a lot of books, and you talk to a lot of different guys, and some of them, of course, all the ones that have been on our show are fantastic, but sometimes you'll read a book and, it's those that can't do teach, if you will. And so, it's where they write a book about all the things you should do. And then the reality is man, some of that stuff, it's a little more difficult to actually do it than it is to just read about it. But I love what you're doing is that you're actually working with entrepreneurs out there in the trenches. And in the book, it's kind of funny. I was going through it the other day, and a mutual friend of ours, Rob Dubay, is actually featured here, and I had no idea that he was in the book. He doesn't go around, saying that necessarily, but you put real live examples of folks and how they've implemented these things in their business, and it's not just a theory of, hey, here's what I theoretically or I think you should do. These are real studies of how it works in the real world. So let's jump in real quick a little bit into EOS and what that stands for and how it actually works.
You bet. So to just zoom out a little bit on that point and then get into the specifics, with that whole real world point. In other words, I didn't feel confident that I had something until 5 years of testing. And again, I'll use the word obsession a lot because I obsess a lot. And the idea was to hone and refine and get down to the absolute bare essentials, a set of tools and a system that would create the best results in the least amount of time. And so it truly is a simple system, but it's incredibly powerful. And when I talk about system, it's an operating system. And so when we say operating system, that's basically how a company plans, prioritizes, meets, solves issues, communicates, manages, measures, systemizes. And so every company does that a certain way. And the truth of the matter, if everybody's doing those things their own way, it's absolute chaos. What EOS does is it helps them plan, prioritize, meet, solve issues, communicate, manage, measure, and systemize in a coherent system where everyone does it the same way, so that all of that human energy is going in one direction and everyone is speaking the same language. And so the way that it works is we work with entrepreneurial leadership teams of 10 to 250 person companies. And in its simplest form, we call it vision, traction, health. We help that leadership team get 100% on the same page with the vision for the organization using some very simple, powerful tools so that they're rowing in the same direction. Traction from a standpoint of helping them become more disciplined and accountable and execute better as a team and achieve that vision. And then healthy from a standpoint of helping them become a more healthy, functional, cohesive leadership team, because truth be told, most of them are dysfunctional. And then from there, as goes the leadership team, so goes the rest of the company. And they get to a point where the entire organization is crystal clear on the vision, gaining much better traction, and much more healthy. And so it's still kind of high level, but that's the gist of what we do.
Okay, and then we had mentioned that there were 6 key components of every business. Can you touch on those real quick?
Yeah, you bet. And so now as we start to get into more specifics, when we talk about an operating system, we take a holistic approach to the organization. And one of my discoveries is that every business is comprised of 6 key components: vision, people, data, issues, process, and traction. Every business is comprised of those 6 key components. And to the degree they are strong, then that company is well run. And so what we do is help them strengthen those 6 key components by just using a handful of tools that take them to the root of all of their issues, because the reality is entrepreneurs are tending to wrestle with 136 things simultaneously. Well, once they have this awareness in this snapshot, and we have something called the EOS model, which illustrates those 6 key components, once they look at their business through the lens of the 6 key components and then strengthen those 6 key components, the 136 things have a way of just falling into place because they were all symptoms. The root of their issues are in those 6 key components. And the other reality is, there are 1,000 books written on how to strengthen each one of those 6 key components. And what I've done, again, through my obsession, is honed, refined, tested, learned, studied what works in the fastest amount of time and creates the most impact. And so it's just a handful of time-tested, timeless, practical, real-world tools that have been around since the beginning of time and will be around for the foreseeable future, at least the next 1,000 years.
Sure. Well, that is great information. And guys, if you're listening to this show and you're driving down the road, or you don't have a pen and paper handy, as always, the show notes on ambitiousradio.com, just pull up Gino Wickman, Gino Wickman, and he will put notes to the EOS model and links back to everything that's mentioned here on the show. If you like what you're hearing, you can subscribe by texting ambitious to 69922. Standard messaging rates will apply. See the website for full details. Next, we're going to be talking more to Gino about the ambitious things that he has planned next, right here on the Ambitious Radio Network.
Were you recently notified by a major retailer that there was a data breach and that your personal information had been compromised? When was the last time that you viewed all of your credit reports? Was it when you refinanced your home, or maybe when you purchased a new car a couple of years ago? If so, go to roadtoblack.com. Come to make sure that you have not been a victim of identity theft. You might have also recently heard that more than 21 million government employees and contractors' personal data was breached, including their social security numbers. RoadToBlack.com offers credit monitoring with alerts, score tracking, and a score simulator. Could you be at risk? Only if you have a social security number. RoadToBlack.com offers a one-stop solution with the credit information you need to stay informed. You can review your past credit history, check your current credit scores, and even use a credit simulator tool to get insight into what your credit could look like tomorrow. Just go to roadtoblack.com to see what's on your credit today. That's road, the number 2, black.com. roadtoblack.com.
Back in here on the show, it's Ambitious Radio Network. Hey, are you thinking of expanding your business but don't want to spend tens of thousands of dollars on a new phone system? Consider Grasshopper.com. You get to keep your existing number, you have multiple extensions, voicemails transcribed, and no new hardware. Grasshopper.com is the entrepreneur's phone system. Let's get back to the show with Doug Parker.
All right, we're back on the Ambitious Radio Network talking to Gino Wickman today. We're so excited to really get to visit with people that have a bend towards leadership, towards entrepreneurialism, that can really give us sound advice to go back and apply in our endeavors as soon as we get done listening. So let's kind of pull back the covers and maybe talk a little bit about what Gino's working on next. I know you're a prolific writer. I've got actually multiple books right here on my desk with some of your implementers that you've written. But what are you working on next, and how do you make that determination on what's next?
Great. So I'm going to back up to go forward. And so, with what we've talked about with EOS, the first 5 years was me testing, honing, refining, and creating something that I believe would help an entrepreneur from there, it was then perpetuating and leveraging it to the world, if you will. And we sit here today with over 120 EOS implementers that are working with companies, helping them implement EOS all over the world. And in addition to that, we have about 30,000 companies using the EOS tools to help them run a better business. And so as we go to the future now, and if you picture that entrepreneurial 10 to 250 person company and the power of what EOS does for them, what that has spawned is, I currently have 3 books. Traction is kind of the foundation. There's Get a Grip, which is a fable about EOS being implemented in a company. And then there's Rocket Fuel, which is a focus on the visionary integrator duo at the helm of every great company. With that said, going forward, we're going to really now start to focus on, in addition to growing EOS, which, the opportunity is absolutely limitless there. We're going to focus on really helping that visionary integrator duo at the helm of an organization really create a dynamic duo. We want to create some of the most powerful visionary integrator duos on the planet. And so really building a platform to help them learn how to crystallize, connect, and maximize their relationship. In addition to that, we're going to now start to go further into the EOS organization, if you will. And so I have a book coming out in September called How to Be a Great Boss. So if you think about Rocket Fuel for the visionary integrator at the top of the organization, Get a Grip and Traction for that leadership team to roll EOS out to the organization, How to Be a Great Boss is for all of the mid-managers and supervisors in an organization to help them become world-class leaders and managers of their people and ultimately create accountability in the organization. And so again, that comes out in September. And then what I just began writing, literally in the last few weeks, is a book called What the Heck is EOS? And what that is that is a book for every employee in a company that's implementing EOS to help that employee be aware of what's coming, ready them for the message, but also motivate them to really get their leadership to roll the tools out. So they're actually going to help to pull those tools down in the organization, because what it's ultimately going to do is create an incredibly engaged team for an organization and total buy-in, excitement, energy, and all of those wonderful things. So that's a handful of things that I'm working on right now.
Sure. And it's, obviously all of these things are kind of interconnected. And so that's kind of the beauty, obviously, of you also practicing, what you're preaching. So the 3 books that you mentioned, I've got all 3 of them here. And Traction, as you mentioned, really seems to be here is the operational guide. Here's how you implement this entrepreneurial operation program and or system. And then Get a Grip, that would have been the fable. So it's a story of, you go through and here's some people that were struggling with their business and they implemented, they brought in an implementer and they went through that process. And would you say that is the people to read that? Would that be more your mid-level type management people that are not the visionaries, the upper level folks, or who would that book be for?
No, actually, that book, both Traction and Get a Grip, are for the leadership team. Certainly anyone in the organization can read it. But what it is there's 2 types of readers out there. So there's some that love the how-to manual, which is what Traction is. And there's some that just love a fable because they're pulled into all of that drama. And so it's really interesting. We have people that absolutely love Get a Grip and don't like Traction as much in terms of the writing style. And then we have people that love Traction and don't love Get a Grip so much due to the writing style. So it's all preference, but it's 100% for that leadership team to help them roll out EOS to their organization. So both for the...
Yeah, it's funny that you say that, because one of our more analytical types, we've gone through both of the books, and one of our more analyticals is like, I'm not liking this Get a Grip book because I just want to know what I'm supposed to do and go do it. I don't need all the fluff. But I actually enjoyed, hearing the story and listening to it, because I'm more of an auditory learner, and I want to, hear the process and go through it and not just be all the details and like wah 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 wah. So, and then Rocket Fuel is, you said, for the visionary slash implementer, or not an implementer, but what was the other term for the execution person?
Integrator.
Integrator. That's it. Integrator. So all great books. I've got all of them right here on my desk, and I, highly recommend those. So the things you're doing are pretty much all in line with staying focused. Using that EOS process. And again, I love it when people, put their money where their mouth is, and they do the things that they say to do. It's not just talk. That's fantastic stuff. So let's talk a little bit about maybe things that we talked about. What's next? But who's mentoring you, or who are you following right now?
So my mentor is Dan Sullivan of The Strategic Coach. He's absolutely changed my life. I've been working with him for 17 years. And I still can't get enough. He's a genius at creating context for entrepreneurs. So that's who's coaching me. And then who I'm following is Peter Diamandis. I'm really fascinated with where the world is going, and Peter Diamandis has his finger on the pulse. Offers an amazing program called Abundance 360 every year in Beverly Hills. It's a 3-day program, and so he's really, really blowing the minds of a lot of people, keeping us all, helping us have our finger on the pulse of where the world's going.
So let's talk about that. Abundance 360. It's a program, but you say keeping your finger on the pulse. Is it more business orientated, or is it just what's going on in the world? What exactly is it?
It is everything going on in the world that's cutting edge. I wish I could explain it eloquently, but it is what's going on in advancements with the human body, with virtual reality, 3D printing, all forms of technology. It's everything, and how it's all coming together. And he just has this incredible way of taking these incredibly overwhelming topics and just bringing it down to the ground and making it simple to understand, and helping you just see how some of these things are going to converge, and how it will affect my business, how it will affect my clients' businesses, and also seeing opportunities for where the world is going to capitalize on future opportunities for your business.
Great. Well, I'll have to research that a little bit. Sounds like a really very interesting and educational type of an environment. So we'll check that out. And again, we'll put the link on the show notes page, and make sure that everyone else knows about it as well. So very ambitious times we've got here. We love hearing all that you have to say. And after a brief word from our sponsors, we'll get right back with Gino and discuss what he does to recharge his ambitious body, mind, and spirit right here on the Ambitious Radio Network. Hey, ambitious listeners, you hear us interviewing entrepreneurs all the time, and there's a common theme. They want to be more productive and improve their communication. As an ambitious entrepreneur, you're always on the go. So turn your mobile phone into a business phone system with Grasshopper, the entrepreneur's phone system. The Ambitious Radio Network recently partnered with Grasshopper to offer our listeners a special discount. Log on to ambitiousradio.com and click on the Grasshopper banner in the bottom right-hand corner. Get a new business number or keep your current one. Sound professional with a main greeting and multiple extensions that forwards callers to your mobile phone or others in your organization. Get a toll-free number or local number for your business with multiple extensions. Set up each extension with custom call forwarding to any phone in the world. Get your voicemails emailed to you as an audio attachment or transcribe an email. Keep business calls separate from your personal calls. Plans start at $12 a month with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Remember to click on the Grasshopper banner at ambitiousradio.com for a special discount for our listeners. Join the over 150,000 small business owners that have stayed connected with Grasshopper. See how Grasshopper works? It's the entrepreneur's phone system. Turn the world into your office.
And we're back in here on the show. It's Ambitious Radio Network, recharging the ambitious mind, body, and spirit, made possible by RepairMyCreditNow.com. Having bad credit can be really draining. It's okay to not be okay as long as you're on the road to being okay. Let RepairMyCreditNow.com help get you back on track. Many of our ambitious listeners prefer to listen to books as opposed to reading them. Now, with that, we've teamed up with Audible.com to offer you one free audiobook. Just go to ambitiousradio.com, click on the Audible banner on the page to find out more. Back to the show now with Doug Parker.
All right, we're back on the Ambitious Radio Network talking to Gino Wickman, and we're going to talk about what he does to recharge his ambitious body, mind, and spirit, kind of talk about what his daily activities look like. Welcome back to the show, sir.
Thank you.
So let's talk about maybe things that you do. What does an average day look like for you? You mentioned that you plan out your day the night before, but what time do you go to bed? What time do you get up? How much sleep do you get? Those kinds of things.
Great. So I'll back up one step on that. I live in what Dan Sullivan calls the entrepreneurial time system. And so what it is it's every day of my life is one of 3 days. It's a focus day, it's a free day, or it's a buffer day. And so this is what Dan Sullivan teaches every entrepreneur in his strategic coach program. And so depending on which type of day it is, I'm typically always getting 6 to 7 hours of sleep. I try like heck to get 8. I'm a better person when I get 8, but it's just hard to do. And with that, when it's a focus day, what I am doing on a focus day is I am typically creating content, or I am doing a session or a talk of some sort, or meeting with clients. And so that's where I'm kind of doing the work, for lack of a better term, just kind of living in my God-given skill set, if you will. A buffer day is a day where, in terms of keeping myself rejuvenated and clear and well prepared for great focus days and free days, is about once a week I take a buffer day. A buffer day is a full day for me to clean up messes, get organized, prepare for the next day's meetings, sessions, etc. But on a buffer day, I have cleared the decks, I am clear-headed, and I'm ready to take on the next day. And one example is for a free day. So for instance, if I'm going on a 2-week vacation, or regardless of how long the vacation is, I always advise to buffer your vacations. And so you should always take a buffer day going into a vacation and a buffer day coming out of a vacation, because what most people do is they don't, and they go from 150 miles an hour to 0, and then they go from 0 to 150 miles an hour when they come back, and they don't have those transition days. Well, a buffer day is so powerful, and just getting you in the right place mentally and energetically for whichever day is going to come next. So I do about a buffer day a week. The other thing that I do, and then free days, I think, are self-explanatory. So free days are when you're turning off the world and you're not doing any form of work, and they're truly a 24-hour period where you're doing everything you enjoy doing non-business. And so that's either travel or spending time with family or whatever it is. And so that's kind of the high level gist of what each day looks like from a focus free and buffer standpoint.
And how often do you get to take a free day?
I take 160 days a year off.
Is that including the weekends, or are you talking about during the 5-day?
That includes weekends.
Okay.
I take the month of August off every year, and then I take about 4 to 6 vacations a year, and then I probably work I would guess 10 to 12 weekends a year, and so the rest of those are certainly weekends.
Okay, all right. That's interesting. With entrepreneurs, as hard hitting as they are and just grinding it out, you got to recharge at some point. So that's real interesting. So have you always been that way, or at some point did you burn out and just realize I've got to take some time off and got some coaching to process through that?
Yeah, I had a little vein of that in me, but it was really the strategic coach program that taught me that. And going back to what we talked about in the earlier segment with these frustrated entrepreneurs, I need to be the example. I'm running 2 companies, and I've got to be the example for them. And so what I'm most proud of is I'm able to help them reduce their frustrations, have a better balance of life, and spend a lot more free time. And the beauty is they're making considerably more money while cutting back. It's counterintuitive, but it works.
Yeah, and I'm guilty of that. I mean, you have that feeling you've got to be there and got to do it, and so I've always got to work on that myself. So what does a day look like for you? Let's say that's your focus day. So you get up, you get going. Obviously, depending on what time your schedule starts, but do you have any kind of meditation? Do you have any kind of daily breakfast? Any routines that you do? Anything like that?
So again, it depends on whether it's a focus for your buffer day, because they're always a little different. But obviously breakfast every morning. I eat pretty much the same thing for breakfast every single morning. The other meals can vary, but I eat my homemade turkey sausage patties and an apple every morning. And I could eat the same thing every day for the rest of my life. So I'm pretty boring from that standpoint. I try to wear the same thing every day if I can, so I don't have to think about that. And and then it's like I talked about. I prepare the night before. It's basically looking at my day and what's ahead, and then heading out and doing whatever is before me. And if it's again a focus day, if it's a session day, because I still do sessions with my clients, it's my number one love and my number one passion. And so on a session day, I am typically driving in to my session room. I show up an hour before the session, prepare well. The client shows up. We typically do on average a 7-8 hour session. And then I walk out of the session room with my client and then head home, for lack of a better term. And I'm typically on the phone, got about a 45-minute drive home. I'm typically on the phone, start to finish, kind of clearing the decks, debriefing the session, things like that. So that's a typical session day. And then there are days that, it's a much more choppy day, like today, where there were 6 different appointments, again, all laid out. And I allow a cushion in between each one of those appointments to prepare well and be ready. So I'm at my best for each meeting or call or conference call. And so it's a little more of a choppy day, but nonetheless tends to start the same and end the same, if you will. And then a free day is very different. If it's assuming it's not a vacation, I love to do some form of exercise when I can. I'm not great at it, but do my best. And it's just a variety of things. It's either yoga or biking or using a trainer or just some form of exercise that gets my blood pumping a little bit. Love to go to the movies, love to read a book, love to spend time with family, love to spend time with friends. So I don't know if that clearly answers it for you, but keep asking if I'm not being clear.
No, absolutely. That's great stuff. Now, one thing was you said, did you say handmade turkey sausage or homemade? Do you do it yourself?
Yeah, so I actually had to hire a chef to teach me how to eat well, and just gave us a great recipe. And once my wife learned the recipe, she's wonderful, and she prepares those for me, freezes them. And so I literally have 20 to 30 of them in the freezer, and I grab 3 of them every morning and cook them up and eat them with an apple. And it's, I've learned what my body, I'm a fanatic about, learning and understanding my body. And so I learned all of my food sensitivities, and I now eat everything that is not those items. And one, fortunately, are these turkey sausage and an apple, and I stay away from anything that inflames my body or my body is sensitive to. And so I just kind of had to find a food that my body liked, because it used to be a couple of hard-boiled eggs or yogurt or something like that, only to learn that my body is sensitive to those things. And so I just kind of had to so long answer, but the short answer is yes, homemade turkey sausage patties.
Fantastic. Now, you mentioned also you like to read books too. Just one of the things you enjoy doing. So what's one of your favorite books?
One of my favorite, well, it's an old time classic, but Think and Grow Rich is probably, you had asked me earlier what my favorite book was, and I had to ponder that. And there are so many, it's such a hard question to answer because I could rattle off 20. I actually have on our website what I call kind of the top 20 books. But Think and Grow Rich, if I look at the last 30 years of my life, and I'd say probably 27, because that's how many years ago I read that book probably had the most impact. That and an audio recording from Earl Nightingale called The Strangest Secret, that book and that audio recording had the biggest impact on my life. And then there are 20 to 100 other great books that have touched me some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, and I enjoy listening to things rather than reading. Sometimes I'm forced to read, but we do have a deal with Audible. So if you are like me and you prefer to listen, go to ambitiousradio.com and just click on the banner there. You get a couple free books if you haven't already done it already. And I know several of the books that we've mentioned today are going to be on list of books that you can get. So that's really great. Great information. You have really kind of filled us in with all kinds of great content about yourself and how entrepreneurs can become effective. So as we kind of close down the show, I know you kind of have just written or are writing a new book called How to Be a Great Boss. And for entrepreneurs, sometimes, it's hard for us to get why everybody else isn't as excited or as focused or as disciplined as we are about what we're doing. But I'm assuming it gives you some ways to cope with different things and how to, be good to your people. Can you talk a little bit about that book in closing? And then if you could have one ask of our guests, how they would, kind of interact with you and if they could do anything for you.
That's great. I appreciate that. So, again, the book is called How to Be a Great Boss, comes out in September. And if you have people that report to you, and so I'm certainly talking to the entrepreneur as well as I am the leadership team and any mid-managers, it is a very simple, practical, powerful book that takes you to the heart of what makes a great leader, what makes a great manager. And it is simply 5 things as a leader, 5 things as a manager. And so, as with all of the other content, it's simple, it's practical, it's time tested, it's real world. And so that's the book. And thanks for letting me do a little bit of a pitch there, which I'm always a little uncomfortable doing. As for my ask, I don't know what I would ask, because I just want to help entrepreneurs. And so if you like what you hear and if you think it'll help, go to eosworldwide.com, and we do 2 blogs a week. There is a ton of free content. If you like what you hear, go to Amazon and buy Traction or one of the other books. It's all, for a $20 book and interacting with the website for free, it'll give you everything you need to run a great business. We take an abundance approach, and we just want to help entrepreneurs get everything they want from their businesses.
Well, Gino, thank you so much for your time today. I know you're an extremely busy person, and I have really enjoyed the content that you provided. I get the emails and I read through them, and I've got the books, and it's great stuff. And the one thing I will say, and this is me, not you saying this, but I have read the books and they're great. But I think that implementer piece is really significant because it's one thing to have read it, it's one thing to know it, it's a whole nother thing to know it and not do anything with it. And that's kind of the stage I've probably gotten myself into. And so, that's probably the next step for me is really engaging with one of the implementers, because it's, I know that sometimes it helps to have someone around you herding the cats that are bouncing around in your brain of all the little shiny things that you want to do. So with that being said, thank you so much for your time, sir.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Well, tune in, guys, on Wednesdays to Ambitious Radio, where we interview thought leaders and exciting entrepreneurs changing the faces of their organizations. Remember, you can make money or you can make excuses, but you cannot make both. So go out there and be ambitious.
Thank you for listening to the Ambitious Radio Network, hosted by serial entrepreneur Doug Parker. Join us weekly as we have engaging conversations with ambitious entrepreneurs and thought leaders on topics that can be applied immediately after listening. Like what you've heard? Listen to other interviews at ambitiousradio.com or subscribe on iTunes.